Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's a little bit after 6:30, and I know this is not the only thing that folks have to do tonight. So I want to welcome you all to this webinar, and just a few ground rules as we get started. If you can keep your video and your audio muted for the most part, that will help maintain bandwidth for everybody. And if you have questions as we go through these talks tonight, if you could put them in the chat pod for us, that would be great. We'll try to answer clarification questions as we go through, but save big questions for the end, and we'll have some time to have discussion at the end of the webinar tonight. I think to get started, I want to thank the Farm Service Agency and the Natural Resources Conservation Service for helping put this together tonight. We wanted to have some general information about drought management and kind of where we are in terms of rangeland drought right now, but really focus on some of the programs that Farm Service Agency and NRCS have available, both for drought and for other programs as well. My name is Dan Macon. I'm the Livestock and Natural Resources Advisor for UC Cooperative Extension, covering Placer, Nevada, Sutter, and Yuba counties. And I think what we'll do is go ahead and get started with just a really quick overview, and then we'll turn it over to the agency folks to talk about their programs. And again, if you can put questions in the chat pod, that would be great. So what I want to cover real quickly tonight is kind of give everybody some sense of how 2021 compares with the drought conditions that we faced over the last decade. I'm going to have a really quick overview of some kind of basic drought management concepts in terms of rangeland livestock production, and then we'll turn it over to our FSA and NRCS partners to really go through their programs. So I was looking back at my records and looking at 2014, which in my experience was probably one of the driest years, worst droughts that I've ever experienced. And if we look at the Drought Monitor Map, a significant component of California was in D4, exceptional drought. If we look at the most recent Drought Monitor Map, at least according to the conditions that they're looking at, we're not quite in as worse a shape as we were back in 2014. But a significant part of California is now in D3. And I think that's significant for lots of reasons, not the least of which some of the programs that are available to producers. But if we look at rangeland conditions and we look at the kind of the vegetation drought response index for rangeland in California, and this was taken last week. If you look here along the foothills where we are somewhere in the neighborhood of moderate to severe drought. Any of you that are over in the Coast Range north of Sacramento are undoubtedly drier than we are here. And I took a flight to Seattle a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty stark, the lack of green grass in the Coast Range from Sacramento north. If we look at root zone soil moisture, things are considerably worse off here in Northern California. And if you've checked soil moisture on your places here recently, you know that things are very, very dry and really have been dry all spring. So how did we get here? We had lower than average precipitation throughout Northern California in the last water year, 2019 through 2020, and higher than normal summer and fall temperatures in 2020 as well, not to mention a great deal of smoke. Those of us that graze animals on annual rangeland know that we had a very late germination this last year, really around Thanksgiving time, which is about a month later than what we normally expect. And then I've kept records here in Auburn, where I live, since 2002, and this is the driest year-to-date that we've ever been since I've kept those records. We're at just under 19 inches for the season right now in Auburn. Our normal precip in Auburn is around 32 or 33 inches. I know those of you over in the Coast Range are considerably less than that. So what we've observed because of that here in the foothills, and I think other places in California as well, is that we've had little to no flow in our seasonal creeks, which is really indicative of a lack of soil moisture, and this persisted through the winter months. And because of that, a real lack of stock water on a lot of our annual rangelands. We may have some forage, but if we don't have stock water, we can't get livestock out there to utilize it. Here in the foothills below 1,000 foot elevation, we saw early leaf out of our blue oaks in mid to late February, which is considerably earlier than normal. We're seeing continued blue oak mortality throughout the foothills, which is related, we think, to water stress in foothill rangelands. We've been very spotty in terms of our forage production this spring in the foothills. Some regions seem to be close to the long-term average, but other parts of the foothills have significant reduction in forage productivity. I think most of us have probably seen peak standing crop below about 1,500 foot elevation in the foothills. Everything's headed out. It's awfully dry. And with early peak standing crop, we have a drop in forage palatability as well. Then we had a prescribed fire workshop about a month and a half ago. And at that point, the fire folks were telling us that fuel moisture levels were probably 30 to 45 days ahead of normal. In early April, it was more like mid-May. We've seen fires now in the foothills in this last week. And so fuel moisture levels are starting to reach that critical point as well. So with all of that, this is really kind of the reason we're here tonight. We do have a USDA drought declaration that covers all of California, either in direct drought or because those counties are contiguous to counties that are experiencing drought. And Farm Service Agency and NRCS will tell us a little bit more about what that means here in just a second. Shifting gears, I want to talk a little bit about drought management strategies for livestock producers. And really, most of our strategies come down to ways that we can maintain flexibility in terms of our forage supply or flexibility in terms of forage demand. We have a range of proactive tools that hopefully we can implement before drought hits. And then we're probably all on the standpoint right now where we're starting to adopt reactive tools, where we're responding to very dry conditions. If we look at the forage supply flexibility tools that we've got available to us, many of us stock our ranches conservatively, trying to plan for these bad years. A number of folks have used grass banking and or pasture rest to try to save forage for dry conditions like this. And then we can also acquire pasture or range insurance, which helps us acquire additional forage supplies. On the demand side of things, we can identify animals that could be sold in the case of dry stretches or drought. There are a number of folks that have incorporated additional classes of livestock as a drought tool. So in good years, maybe running stockers or feeders, and in dry years like this, not doing that. And then we're starting to see people adopt multi-species grazing as a tool. Because sheep and goats may have a bit different forage preferences than cattle will have. We've seen people use those small ruminants as a drought management tool. In terms of the reactive tools, supplemental feeding, primarily of protein, is a tool that a lot of folks use if they've saved dry forage. We do see ranchers looking at substitution feeding or full feeding, where they're totally out of standing forage and they're feeding hay. We'll talk about some of the challenges with that in just a sec. We do see folks starting to think about hauling stock water or developing new stock water sources as a way to access forage that they've saved in other ways. We'll talk about government assistance here in just a bit. And then we do see people thinking about renting additional land that may not be grazed. On the forage demand side of things, we can do a number of things to reduce our forage demand in conditions like this. One would be early weaning. We can cut the demand that our cows have by weaning their calves and shipping those calves early. Some folks are starting to think about selling replacement females already. And I've talked to a number of producers throughout Northern California that have called breeding females pretty significantly. Another tool that we can talk about a little bit is allowing body condition to decline during dry conditions like this. That can have ramifications, obviously, for female reproduction. I think the point I want you to take from this table is that our reactive tools really are related to the types of proactive tools that we're using. So if we're doing things to save feed proactively, then we should be looking at some of those reactive tools that address forage supply. If we're doing things to address our forage demand, then the tools that we need to think about are those reactive tools like early weaning and culling. And we'll talk, as I said, here in just a moment about government assistance programs. So in thinking about your own drought plan and your own operation, I think one of the really critical considerations for us all is to think about what our forage supply looks like for the next 12 months. And in our little sheep operation, we actually do that month by month. We look at what we've got in terms of quality, about quantity, and about how we can access that. Then if we look, if we determine that our forage is inadequate, we think about why that is. Is it a forage quality issue? Do we have enough of it? It's just not got enough protein or energy in it to meet our animals' demands. If we're short on forage, that's an entirely different story and suggests maybe some different strategies. And then if we can't get stock water to those areas where we have forage, that can really limit our ability to utilize the forage that we've saved. So if we think about balancing forage supply with demand, then we start reviewing those reactive strategies as a tool for addressing our short and medium term needs. I think the other critical point is here, when is your critical date? One of the things that many of us learned in the 2012 to 2016 drought is that making a decision is critical. And that finding that critical date or key date for making a decision is really important. In our sheep operation, one of our critical dates is whether we're going to have enough forage once the ewes are bred in the fall. And so we need to think about that clear 6 months ahead of that time in late spring or early summer to be thinking about what our forage supply is. Some of the economic considerations that we can think about, we can walk through a partial budget that helps us evaluate those options, whether it's selling cows or buying hay. And in that case, we're going to look at increases in our revenue or decreases in our expenses from those actions. And that's a positive in terms of our partial budget. But then we also need to look at whether those actions will reduce our revenue or increase our expenses. And that's a negative, a net negative. We also need to look at the tax implications of what we're doing. If we're selling breeding animals, those can be treated as capital gains, and we need to think about how we address our taxes in terms of those types of considerations. And then we also need to think about all these market factors. What are cull cows worth? What are replacement heifers worth? Can we sell pairs? Where are the grain markets or the hay markets going? All of those should influence to some extent the types of reactive strategies that we're going to use. So I want to walk through a really quick example, and this could apply to a cow-calf operation. I'm going to use our particular sheep operation as an example here. But our assumptions are that we've got 100 pregnant ewes, that alfalfa hay can be bought in for $15 a bale, and that we're going to have to pay somebody $15 an hour to feed responsibly for us. The two scenarios that I'll walk through are one where we have enough low-quality dry forage available. We don't have germination, so we're going to need to supplement protein. The second scenario is where folks may be getting to this spring, and that is where we're out of forage, and we're going to need to put our sheep on full feed, full hay feed for 60 days. So if we look at alternative one or scenario one here, where we've got some dry forage, but we need protein. If we looked at a partial budget, it's not going to generate any additional revenue for us. It may not reduce our expenses either. But on the other hand, it's not going to reduce our revenue. We're going to stay even because we're going to have the same number of lambs to sell. Our additional expenses for our little 100U outfit for 30 days of hay, a bale every other day, is going to be about $337 decrease in our total profit in our business. So in a 100U operation, to lose $337 in profits, probably not the end of the world. But now let's look at scenario number two, where we're out of feed and we're going to have to feed the sheep for 60 days. Again, no increased revenue. Our expenses are not going to be reduced. On the flip side of that, we're going to spend $2,700 for alfalfa and another $450 just to feed that alfalfa for 2 months. So that's going to reduce our profit by over $3,000, which is significant. If we look at that in a little different format, in a normal year, every ewe in that operation is going to generate $37.25 worth of profit. So 100 ewes is going to generate about $3,700 of profit in this operation. If we have to feed hay every other day for 30 days, we do have some increased expenses, but we're still going to generate $32 per head in profit out of those 100 ewes. If we get in a situation where we're out of feed for 2 months, that means we're going to lose $5.50 per head just by feeding for those 60 days. And I think really the point here is that this, for me, really illustrates that if we're out of feed, we can't feed our way out of that hole. We've got to think about a different strategy, whether it's selling livestock or weeding early or doing something to address that shortfall. And so with that, I want to ask our USDA folks if they would jump in here. And I think we're going to start with Ryan Jones and Caleb Jackson from the Farm Service Agency based out of the Elk Grove Service Center. And then when they're done, we'll have a presentation by Chris Robbins, who's the district conservationist here in the Auburn Service Center. So with that, Ryan, I'm going to stop sharing and I will turn this over to you to share your screen, unless there are any questions that we'll jump into right now.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am Ryan. Give me just 1 second, and I will get my presentation up for you guys.
Ryan's doing double duty, talking from a hotel room in Willows tonight. Is that right?
Yes. All right. So the first program I wanted to talk to you guys about is going to be our Livestock Indemnity Program, or LIP, as I'll call it for the rest of the presentation, so you don't have to hear me say Livestock Indemnity Program 15 times. So eligible owners for the LIP program is anybody who legally owns the livestock on the day the livestock were dead or they were injured due to an eligible loss condition. And for the owners, you must have, or for the livestock, they must have died in excess of the normal mortality as a direct result of the eligible loss condition, or be injured for the same eligible loss. With that, the eligible livestock must have been maintained for commercial use as part of a farming operation the day they died, and they're not just sitting around your house as a wild free-roaming animal, a pet, animals used for recreational purposes such as hunting, roping, or for show. With that, here's our chart of the eligible types of livestock for LIP. We have bulls, cows, beefalo, bison, We go into poultry, swine, alpacas, deers, and the list continues on. And you can always go back to this list later on if you'd like. With this, poultry and swine are the only kinds of livestock that if you're a contract grower that you would be eligible under the program for. Eligible livestock or eligible loss conditions include any of the following which occur in the calendar year which the benefits are being requested. So for 2021, it would be a 2021 live or disaster event. That includes adverse weather, so that's extreme heat, extreme cold. It's basically weather that is completely out of the normal for the time period or very excessive. So if it's usually a 90-degree season and all of a sudden you're getting hit with a week full of 100-degree weather and the cows are starting to die off because of that, that would be an eligible weather condition. We also cover eligible diseases, which has to be exacerbated by the eligible adverse weather event or natural disaster. And we also cover eligible attacks, which are attacks that are by animals reintroduced to the wild by the federal government or protected by federal law. And with all losses, they must be in excess of the normal mortality. So your documentation, if the cattle are lost, is going to be if you have rendering check receipts or certificates, veterinary records, private insurance documents, producer records at the time of the event, or pictures with a date that show the death. If you had any sold injured livestock for a reduced price because they were injured because of the eligible adverse weather condition or attack, you must provide the verifiable evidence, which is going to be sales receipts from a livestock auction, a sale barn, other livestock sales facilities, rendering facility receipts, or processing plant receipts. The livestock death payments are going to be adjusted for the normal mortality, which is calculated by paying the national payment rate towards the applicable livestock category, and it'll be reduced by your share. So if you have a share in the cattle, you're only going to be eligible for your share of the payment. The national payment rate for the eligible livestock owners is based upon 75% of the average fair market value of the livestock. For eligible livestock owners from an injury, you have to provide the receipts that show that they were sold at a reduced price because of the adverse weather event or attack. And we take this by multiplying it times the national payment rate and subtracting what you were paid for the livestock. If you happen to be paid more for your injured livestock than the national payment rate, then unfortunately there's going to be no payment for that. So as an owner or a contract grower, you must file a notice of loss with us within 30 days of the loss when it's first apparent to your local FFA office, as well as file an application for payment within 60 calendar days after the end of the calendar year. So for 2021 losses, you'll be applying now in your physical location. It used to be your recording county, but now it'll be by your physical location. Another program we offer is the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or NAP. This program it's a way of crop insurance for crops that do not have crop insurance available to them, such as native pasture. And an eligible producer is a landowner, a tenant, or a sharecropper who shares the risk in producing the eligible crop and is entitled to an ownership of that crop. Eligible crops must be commercially produced for agricultural commodities for which crop insurance is not available, including your native non-irrigated pasture. So eligible producers must file an application for coverage, which is a CCC 471, and pay the service fees at your local FSA office where your farm records are maintained. For all coverage levels, the NAP service fee is going to be $325 per crop, or $825 per administrative county. So if you have multiple counties that you're in, if you have 3 counties, you're only paying $825. Or if you are highly multiple counties and other offices, the most that you'll pay for your coverage is going to be $1,950. And with that, there is a fee service waiver that some farmers are able to apply for. We have it for beginning farmers or ranchers, limited resources farming and ranchers, socially disadvantaged farmers or ranchers, or veteran farmers or ranchers. With those, you can go through the list to see what you might qualify for. Beginning or farmers and ranchers, it's 10 years or less in farming. Limited resource, you have to fall below a certain point on the national poverty line, which you can see if you qualify for with the link below. Veteran farmers or ranchers, it's anybody who's served in armed forces and has owned or operated a ranch for less than 10 years, or first got their veteran status within the last 10 years. So for the native pasture, the deadline to sign up and pay your service fees is September 1st, the year prior to coverage. So unfortunately for 2021, it is too late for the coverage, but for 2022, you can apply for your coverage and it must be paid for by September 1st of this year. And we use the acreage reports to determine the location and number of acreage covered by the application. And you must file a notice of loss within 15 calendar days of when the loss first becomes apparent. And you must put in an application for payment to your FSA office for a NAP payment within 60 days of the last day of coverage year for any covered crop. So that is within 60 days of September 1st of 22 for that program year. And with that, to get the program activated, there has to be 3 independent sources that declare that there is at least a 51% loss for the county for the year. And from that point, we can activate the program. And the last program that I want to talk about today is the Emergency Conservation Program. This program is a cost share program subject on the availability of funds, and the object of ECP is to make a cost share assistance available to eligible agricultural producers and ranchers performing the approved practices to help rehabilitate farmlands when water erosion, floods, hurricanes, and other national disasters. We can also, in the periods of drought, we can supply emergency water for livestock that include confined livestock and poultry, existing eligible irrigation systems serving orchards and vineyards, buried main lines, ditches, and other permanently installed systems. For ECP drought, a severe drought condition must exist where the available water source is being reduced below normal and survival is unlikely without additional water. ECP implementation for drought is based on your local county office submitting evidence that the county precipitation levels are at a 40% or greater loss than normal precipitation the 4 most recent months, and they must submit that to their state office for a drought designation. And if there's interest in the program, FSA will conduct a COC meeting to get a cost estimate and get that sent up to national office to approve and allocate funds for a startup period. With that, the ECP program for drought, it's a cost share program to help you guys dig new wells, deepen existing wells, and it is a cost share program for 50% of the actual cost if it's a temporary practice of just deepening a ditch, or if it's something more permanent like digging a new well, we cover up to 75%, and it can go up to 90% if you qualify for any of the socially disadvantaged farming or ranching practices from the NAP program. Unfortunately, with this program, if they dig a well and it's dry, so there's no water in it, it can't be cost shared. It is a slower process for this program for the drought than with all the other drought programs we offer, just because it has to go through environmental reviews and has to go through a few different steps to get approved. With that, for rangeland and it being considered new ground disturbance for the wells, environmental reviews will be contracted out to archaeologists and have consultations that must be done through both the State Historical Preservation Office and the Tribal Historical Preservation Office. So with the archaeologists, they'll need to walk the fields and take soil samples, as well as document any existing structures and buildings that are near the proposed project area for a cultural resource survey. This process can take up to a few months for the consultations with the SHPO and SIPO and contracting out the archaeologist. And with that, the surveys can determine that there's either no cultural importance and the project can be proceeded forward. There may be a cultural importance, but it's far away enough from the project that we can proceed forward, or the area is culturally important and will need further survey and analysis, and that the project location cannot be moved to avoid cultural resources, FSA might have to avoid or might have to withdraw assistance or not approve the application. But once the program is instated, we will have you guys come in and apply for the project that you need. And once we get that fully approved, we can have you guys come in or begin the project after it's approved. And after everything.
Ryan, I think I just muted you by mistake. Sorry about that. Back on.
Can you hear me?
You. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So after you are approved, you are able to complete the project. You have, I believe, 6 months to complete the project, but you can extend it for another 6 months to get the program or project finished. And after you've completed the work, you will submit your receipts or time cards, whether you had purchased the materials or if you had installed it yourself, and they will pay you off of that as the cost share. And you'll either get the 75% of your actual cost or the lesser of if it had cost less than what they had projected. And with that, I believe I'm done. So I would like to pass it over to Caleb for his section.
Ryan, just a couple of really quick questions while we're on this topic.
All right.
On the NAP program, do you have to bring proof of a lease in order to be able to qualify if you're on leased land?
Yes. If you're leasing a land, we'll need a copy of the lease. But if it is a handshaking deal, which it seems like it is with a lot of the rangeland, we do offer a 855, which is a annual lease certification that will be signed by both the lessee and the lessor.
Okay.
And it can be signed as a cash lease. We don't need to know how much is going on between the two parties. We just need to know that there is a lease on file.
Okay. All right. And then on the ECP program, you referenced severe drought. Is that severe drought as defined by the Drought Monitor? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
So we will have to take the results of the Drought Monitor to our state office to get the program implemented.
Okay. All right. And then will that also cost share if you have to haul water, or is it just for new wells or other infrastructure?
That's going to be for the new wells. Caleb is going to be talking about the ELAP program, which will get into the water hauling.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll shut up now and we'll turn it over to Caleb.
All right.
Thank you. That was outstanding.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Can everybody see that?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Like Ryan and Dan said, my name is Caleb Jackson, and we're just going to give you, or I'm going to give you a brief overview of a couple of these programs that are going to help out specifically for drought and some other things. I know it's been a tough year for everyone, so definitely get in contact with your FSA service center if you haven't already. These programs are definitely paying out and helping producers all up and down California. So I'm just going to go ahead and start. The first program that I'm going to talk about is our Coronavirus Food and Assistance Program. CFAP for short. So CFAP was created to provide aid to ranchers and farmers whose operations were directly impacted by COVID. This program is mainly going to be dealing with 3 different categories of commodities. For you guys, it's going to be mostly the price trigger commodities. That's going to be livestock. It's also dealing with flat rate crops and sales commodities. If you want a full list of all the eligible commodities, just please visit farmers.gov/CFAP. Let's see. And for the price triggered livestock, the payments are going to be based on a fixed number of head, which is going to be defined as the lower of either the highest maximum owned inventory of eligible livestock, excluding your breeding stock, on a date selected by you from April 16th, 2020 through August 31st, 2020. So your highest number of inventory anytime between those 2 dates, or it's going to be the maximum number of livestock per type established by the USDA. You guys won't have to worry about that. Just give us your highest owned inventory during those dates, and then we'll work it out from there. So this is just a chart of what you guys are going to be getting paid on. Beef, cattle per head is going to be $55 a head. Hogs and pigs, $23 a head. Lambs and sheep, $27 a head. Now, some of you have already, or some of you may have already applied for our CCAP2 program. That application did end in December, but we just reopened it April 5th. And it's only going to be open for a limited amount of time, so please contact your service center as soon as possible. The deadline could come as soon as 2 weeks. We're not sure exactly when it's going to end. So if you haven't already applied, please contact your service center. I know this is helping out a lot of producers throughout California. Additionally, there are some additional payments. If you applied under CFAP1, you will get additional payments for the livestock that you applied for under CFAP1. But that CFAP1's application period did end, so unfortunately that period is closed. To be eligible for this program, if you've worked with FSA, you know that for most of our programs, we are going to need to make sure that you make less than $900,000 a year. That's a quick and easy form. It's form CC941. You just check that you make less than $900,000. We'll send that off to the IRS. They'll check. And then if you are eligible, you'll receive payment. Or you have to derive at least 75% of your adjusted gross income from farming, ranching, or forestry related activities. Something else that you'll need to make sure that you're eligible, you're going to have to comply with the provisions of the Highly Erodible Land and Wetland Conservation Act. That's form AD 1026. It's a quick and easy form that you fill out. And those are the main 3 things that are that we're going to need to make sure you're eligible. If you are not a current client with the FSA, we'll need some other information from you. But for this program specifically, these are going to be the main 3 things that we need from you. How to apply, definitely contact your service center. You can apply online, but if you are going to apply online at farmers.gov/CFAP, please just call your service center, let us know, and then we'll make sure to follow up with you and get your application in and submitted. So the next program is going to be specifically related to drought. I know that all the counties that we serve, well, all of California is triggered for drought. So this is if you own livestock and are on native grazing, non-irrigated native grazing ground, you definitely want to sign up for this program. I know it's paying out pretty well. So what's the Livestock Forage Program? It provides payments to eligible livestock owners and contract growers who have covered livestock and are also producers of a graze forage crop. That's going to be non-irrigated native grazing. And everywhere in California has suffered from drought, so you're definitely going to be eligible for this. It also is going to provide payment for eligible livestock owners or contract growers that have covered livestock and are also producers of grazed forage crop acreage on rangeland managed by a federal agency if the eligible livestock producer is prohibited by the federal agency from grazing the normal permitted livestock on the managed rangeland due to the qualifying fire. So this is just a list of the eligible livestock. I know a lot of people here are doing beef, cattle. I've had some sheep sign up. I've had some llamas sign up here in Sacramento County. So if you are a producer of any of these livestock, you're going to be, those livestock are going to be eligible for this program. And for those livestock to be eligible, you must have owned, leased, purchased, or entered a contract 60 days prior to the beginning date of the qualifying drought. So say the drought triggered, August 30th, you're going to need to have owned those by September 1 and through August 30th. And any livestock that were mitigated, just a heads up, we are going to be asking for sales receipts just to make sure that those livestock were sold during that drought period. So if you have those receipts, please save them, send them into your FSA service center with your application. It'll just make the process go a lot easier. For you to be eligible, you have to own or cash share lease, be a contract grower of the covered livestock during the 60 calendar days before the qualifying drought triggered. You're also just going to have to certify that you suffered a grazing loss, and you'll need to timely file an acreage report, a crop report for all the grazing land that your livestock are going to be running on. And the last program that I'm going to be talking about is our ELAP program, the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program. This is mainly what I've dealt with is the water hauling. So just a brief overview. It's going to provide assistance for livestock feed and grazing losses that are not due to drought or wildfires on federally managed lands. It's also dealing with, like I said, water hauling due to drought, and then it's also dealing with losses resulting from additional costs associated with gathering your livestock and treating them for cattle tick fever. But I think for most of you all, it's going to be the water hauling. So to be eligible for this program, you must apply within 30 days once the loss is apparent. So, the day you start hauling water, you'll have 30 days from that point in order to get payment on that water hauling process. So just make sure that you get your application in as soon as possible. Once you know that you're going to need to be hauling water because of a drought, we want to make sure that you're going to get paid on all of that. And you'll have until January 30th of the following program year to apply. So the year runs through, January 1 through December 30th, and you'll have until January 30th of that following year to basically get that application in and submitted. And in addition to applying for payment, producers who have suffered losses must submit a notice of loss to the local to your local FSA service center. Like I said, you'll just want to make sure you do that within 30 days. I think that's all we got. I know Ryan. I know Ryan had our emails on his. We didn't get to show that, and let's stop the sharing.
I
know Ryan had our emails. Yeah.
All right. I think this is up. We also have more information available to you guys. You can find out more about the USDA at the USDA.gov website. Our programs, you can find it at farmers.gov. FSA specific programs, you can find at fsa.usda.gov, or you can find our local service center at the bottom link, or you can just Google search USDA Service Center Locator and the site will pop up. And you can also if you have more questions, you can contact us here. I am at ryan.jones2@usda.gov. Caleb Jackson is at caleb.jackson@usda.gov. Jesse Simoes, who is our County Executive Director in the Elk Grove Service Center, can be reached at jessesimoes@usda.gov. You can also call into our service center at 916-714-1104. We're at extension 2. Or if you're in the Sutter Yuba area, you can call their service center at 530-671-8050, and they're also at extension 2.
Guys, we have just a couple of questions, I think quick questions in the chat box here. What is the LFP benefit amount?
So that's a good question. I do not have, it's very situational. It's going to be based on either, it's got carrying capacity in there, your acreage, and the amount of cattle or the amount of livestock that you have. I don't have an amount for you. You'll want to definitely contact your service center. Honestly, it's a calculator that we just put in the numbers and it spits out an amount for us. But if you want to give us your specific numbers, we can run that real quick for you. You'll just have to contact us.
And I will post a link to this. We did a series of webinars last summer that we did have some additional information from Dr. Tina Saitone at UC Davis on some of these programs too. So the other question we have is on the ELAP program. So you have to apply within 30 days of the loss, but then if the loss continues, you have up until January 30th of the following program year. Is that right?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And if folks have questions, again, they can contact you all directly. All right, so our last speaker this evening is going to be Chris Robbins, who is the District Conservationist with NRCS, excuse me, here in Auburn, Placer County, and I'm going to share my screen. Chris has prepared some slides, and I'll turn it over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Dan said, my name is Chris Robbins. I am the District Conservationist for Placer County. Just like the Farm Services Agency, the NRCS is a federal agency that's part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we have an office in nearly every county in the country. If you want to find your local service center, just like last person said, you can use farmers.gov or do an internet search for USDA Service Center. You can also contact me and I can help you find the appropriate office. Like I said, there's an office in almost every county. And folks there can give you some assistance on finding your way through some of these programs and get you some answers. I don't have a lot of slides to show. I just want to show what our general funding opportunities are that are available all of the time. And the reason why I don't have any outline that are specifically for drought is there hasn't been any officially announced yet for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. There is talk of it happening, of course, with the drought emergency that we're having. And the reason why I don't have any information there is it's kind of tailored from year to year. It's not always the same. So what we do have is these programs listed out here. The Environmental Quality Incentive Program, which is kind of our day-to-day bread and butter programs that most people apply for cost share assistance. So if you're not familiar with NRCS, so we have these cost share programs or financial incentive programs to assist farmers, ranchers, and forest land owners in conserving natural resources and making habitat improvements and reducing resource use, like installing systems to reduce water use, improve air quality, improve habitat, improve forage utilization on rangelands and pasture, and so on and so on. There's a list of hundreds of practices we can assist folks with. So EQIP is generally where people work inside of for those programs. We also have the Conservation Stewardship Program, which I like to kind of call like our EQIP. It's like the graduate program, if you will, for EQIP. So Conservation Stewardship Program is a program that's set up for folks who are already doing a high level of stewardship on their farm, ranch, or forest land. There's a formula run where we come out and walk out on the property with you and determine a baseline score for your stewardship practices. Like if you're already doing cover cropping or you're already doing water conservation and so on, you can get incentive payment for maintaining that level of stewardship, plus doing something to address at least one more resource concern, which is things like water quality, water quantity, air quality, soil health. And we can explain more of the stuff in detail. If you have any questions, you can contact me or anyone else in the NRCS. But so those two programs, EQIP being the most popular, CSP is kind of next most popular. Then we have the ASEP program, which isn't applicable for drought emergencies at all, but that's a program that's in place that is the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. And if you're familiar with county land trusts, like the California Rangeland Coalition Trust and those sort of programs, it's the federally funded program that allows people to put their agricultural producing lands into a permanent easement to prevent development, and NRCS would pay you to put a permanent deed encumbrance on your land to prevent it from being developed. And that usually you work with a local, like here in Placer County, we work with the Placer Land Trust on those projects to get those developed and funded. Then next we have the RCPP, or the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And that's a program that has a specific initiative in mind. And there's several of those all over the nation. The one we have right now in California in the Sierra Nevada foothills is the Crisis to Opportunity Tree Mortality Program. So it's the RCPP program that's like in Placer County, Nevada County, and sorry, it's not Nevada County, but Placer County south all the way down to Kern County, is to address all the dying conifers from the last several years of drought that has resulted in the spread of bark beetle and those sort of pests, and it's killing off our forests. So that program is specifically tailored to address that. All of our costs share or financial incentive programs are set up just like what the folks from Farm Services Agency said. We have eligibility requirements. There's also, since it is federal dollars, we do have to work within the National Environmental Policy Act requirements to do environmental evaluation, cultural resource review, and a tribal consultation. So it does slow the program down a little bit. So if you come in for assistance, all these programs are competitively awarded. So you come in and work with the conservationists to develop a plan for your property, for your ranch, or for your operation, and then apply for funding. It's competitively awarded. It's not guaranteed, unfortunately, but it is similar to a grant in that if you are awarded the program funds, you do not have to pay it back. It is money that is incentivizing you to conserve resources, make improvements, that sort of thing. And like I said, there's hundreds of practices that we can assist you with. So it's hard to really give you specific examples, but some of the things, like specifically for range and pasture land, would be developing water source. So if you don't have a reliable source of water, and I see everything from folks who normally, use a seasonal or perennial creek as a water source to an unreliable domestic well that sometimes goes dry at the end of the season. NRCS can provide financial assistance to drill a new well that is only for livestock. It can't be used to irrigate crops. It can't be used to provide domestic water to your home. It's strictly for livestock. And the associated systems that go with that, like a storage tank and livestock pipelines and a trough, those sort of things can be, and there's a flat rate for all that based on the type of design and type of products you want to use, whether it's a steel trough or a concrete trough, you want to use a HDPE pipeline versus a PVC pipeline. Those are all the details we can get into. If someone needs assistance, we can talk about all that. But so like a lot of the FSA programs, it's hard to give you an exact dollar amount of what the incentive or cost share payment is, but we can always discuss that one-on-one. Folks have questions. So then again, like I said, EQIP's kind of our bread and butter. So if anybody foresees an issue that they need some assistance with, come talk to us now. We do have a ranking deadline coming up here for funding selections in June. So it's getting pretty close to work up against that deadline. The next one will probably be sometime in the fall or winter. But I do know that the state of California, sorry, NRCS California, not the state of California, but NRCS California is requesting additional funds from Washington, D.C. to address the drought emergency as well as some other emergencies in the state. So it's very possible we could have another funding selection period sometime this summer, as well as additional money. So that's kind of all I want to get into without getting into too many details. Like I said, we're available anytime. Give us a call. We are in the office with all the COVID restrictions. We are in the office. Most of us are working from home a lot of times, but all of us are answering the phone and emails all the time, and we can meet you at your farm and ranch or at your forests, and you can make an appointment to meet us in the office. And I see a question, does NRCS provide assistance on leased lands? And yes, we do. So we can provide assistance on owned land, leased lands, and that also includes federal lands if you have a lease on them. The requirement is if you don't own the land, so if you're leasing it from another individual or organization or from a government agency, we just have an additional form to fill out that person or entity agrees to the installation of natural resource conservation service practices on that land. It's a one-page simple form to fill out, have someone sign and agree to that. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Chris, very, very much. That was great. Any other questions on any of this that anybody has tonight? Again, I really appreciate our speakers tonight. Just a wealth of information, and I will send a link to this presentation out to everybody that signed up. I will also be sending a survey link. If you would take a few minutes and give us some feedback on the workshop, that would be really helpful as well. I'll be sending that out tonight. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very, very much. Have a wonderful evening. Might be a little late for rain to do much good on rangelands, but I'm still doing a rain dance here. And hope you all have a great evening. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Jesse. Have a great evening, everyone.